I'm concerned. I was glad to hear Dick Shoup yesterday that I'm not the only one who's concerned about the SSC and the direction that we've been going. So I'm sort of, that's what I said, I've got the red flags up and throwing down the gauntlet if anybody wants to take me on. So I think it's time to look at our standards. And it says we have high standards, even our double standards are high. But I'm going to hit the website, and the things that we're going to talk about, most of them are on our website. And at the council meeting the other day, we were talking about we want to go to industry and look for industry sponsors. I'll guarantee you that any industry out there, you know, in the straight world, the first thing they do to check you out is go look at your website, and some of our stuff will not stand scrutiny. Want to, first of all, acknowledge there's a lot of good work that's going on. So I'm not talking about a lot of these folks I'm talking about. But one of the things that's noticed is often there's a price, personally, that has been paid by these people who have stepped forward, left their careers, and made statements. The other issue is most of the time these folks are working with extremely weak signals. That's kind of a norm. After I was going to give this talk, Roger Nelson came out with his chart. This is when Sai Baba died. And he had issued this, and he says, by the way, there's the statistically significant. But his comment here was, you know, these are very weak signals that they're working on. To his credit, he also pointed out there were two events that happened about the same time. One was the royal wedding, the other was the death of Osama, and they did not get a statistically significant event. Don't really know why. Paralabs, I don't know if Bob and Brenda are here, but they've been working on this. And again, what you see are small but statistically significant signals over long periods of time. Dean Radin and his pre-sentiment experiments, as well as the other one, same sorts of thing. Very small signal. Now these are important, understanding the fundamentals of why these things are happening. It's important to really understand those things. I want to mention Jack Hawken here, the work that he's done in PK. You know, he got the Dinsdale Award last year, but I really wanted the thing from Richard Feynman. If you think science is certain, well, that's just a mistake on your part. Let me transfer to some of the other things. Last year, I gave a whole talk on the men who stare at goats, and if you want, it's on the website now to, you can go and look up the presentation. My point is this. There is zero evidence that anybody or any goat ever died from being stared at. There is strong evidence that it did not happen. And having said that, it got the nonfiction book and the movie. I'm going to skip this. Well, let me talk briefly about it. There's a new book out called Area 51, and I just met her. The problem that I see is this. What she did is she embedded some folks, the real heroes who created Area 51, the U-2, the SR-71s, who risked their lives, in some cases gave them. And at the end of the book, she says, oh, Roswell happened, the Soviets did it, and we were involved in experiments just like Joseph Mengele. Literally linking these people with these kinds of experiments and saying we, the U.S., are doing the same things as Joseph Mengele. Really hit it. The guy's got kind of blindsided on this. I'm going to talk about two areas. One of them is UFOs. This is kind of the spectrum of beliefs in UFOs. Runs from debunkers to aliens among us. I suspect most of our people are somewhere in this category between, you know, we're skeptics, they exist, to UFOs probably exist. The problem with the UFO community right now is they're living down here. That says aliens are among us and walking and whatnot. And that's the prevailing view. My point here is that what they want is, quote, disclosure. You know, my argument is UFOs are not the greatest story never told. And it has happened and happened and happened. The point is that you have all of these presidents. I suppose you'll recognize, just say, a lot of important people have already come out and said UFOs are real. The UFO community now says they ain't good enough. We want full disclosure. And that's somewhere around, yeah, we have trade agreements. We're working with ETs and whatnot. They are deathly serious in this area. Now, one of the problems is, I just happened to pick one area, perception. There's about 3,000 pilot cases on board. So I checked with the guy who gets this. They get about 7 cases a year. Well, I might mention in regard to my new book, I had pilots write me and say, I've been an airline pilot 30, 40 years. I've never seen a UFO, must not exist. So I did some quick calculations on it, because 3,000 sounds like a lot. He says, well, we got about 7 reported annually. If I'm guessing 1% are reported, there's 17.5 billion flying hours on here, and you end up with an effect at 0.0004%. In other words, one hand sounds like there's a lot going on. The other is reality is it's really rare. There are no limits to crazy when you get into this. If you get on, you will find reports on the internet that I led a nuclear attack against aliens in the Dulce tunnels. I don't care how crazy you want to get, there's folks out there. And as I say, you get into literature, there are no lower limits. And this is frankly one of the best sellers in there. The other problem we have is the press. There's a great case in Bentwaters. I haven't got time to get into it, be willing to share it. But the press ends up, last December, somebody suggested that, hey, maybe they dropped an Apollo capsule, like we'd lose an Apollo capsule someplace, just happens to land outside of the base at Bentwaters. But the point is that this is total nonsense, and yet the British press, you know, they disregard all the facts, but the press gloms onto it because it's, you know, it's in the noise, but it gets attention. How does it affect us? 3 years ago here, upstairs in the room, we invited this guy. Now the problem is that he really was the Minister of Defense of Canada. And he made a series of claims. I will be blunt, I tried to get the invitation canceled, it didn't work. But some of you may know Corso, A Day After Roswell. Problem here is that's one of the best-selling books on UFOs in all time, and yet almost no evidence that any of it is actually true. In fact, a lot of, you know, it can almost be totally denied. But they're talking about the U.S. and ET is having a shooting war right now. Again, remember who's saying this, and this is part of the problem. You got these high-level people out here suggesting that they said, we've been involved. They said the Cold War was a cover for ET. I actually challenged. The answer was, I'm not going to nitpick. I said, I don't think the Cold War is nitpicking. You know, that's now, let me go to our website right now, and I'm not blaming Adam. I think he does a great job with Reagan. On our website right now, it says, we know that spaceships from other planets have been visiting Earth for decades. You know, we need to extend a welcome at the thing. Problem here, again, you got the industry is going to come in. This is what they find on our website today. Let me talk about remote viewing. Now, I was on the founding board of IRVA, and they really get upset when I say that, because sometimes it works. There's no doubt. Remote viewing does work at times. Just Joe McMoneagle, 001, great case. He was getting, the target was Lawrence Livermore. This is what he drove. If you've ever been to Livermore, this row of trees really stands out, well worth watching. You know, great target. He was also given one of the ones as an example of what really works. Had a KH-11 photograph. They were giving him a target, grid coordinates way up north. It was a Soviet target. And he came back and he reported, well, they asked him, he first identified the building, then they said, what's in the building? So, okay, number of submarines there, has 20 launch tubes forward of the sail. Nobody had ever seen that before. Double hulled, a lot of different things. Now, our response, they gave it to the boat builders, and they said, can't be true. There's no indication they're changing design. And besides, we can't do that. It's too big. If it went to depth, it would crush. This is the picture that he made of it, and the satellite came on. There was a Typhoon-class submarine. We had totally missed it. So this is another one. I just took it with INGO. SWANN was with him last November. interesting target down here. Again, not just remote viewing, but actually using model clay. That's Bob Durant is the remote viewer, civilian remote viewer who did that target. Now, I am tired of hearing about the myth of military-grade remote viewing. Doesn't work. And I hope if you stay with me, we'll agree. You see, this guy is the trainer of all of those people that you've heard about. He was the guy stepping forward, made a huge career. One of the first things he did, you're probably familiar with Coast to Coast, came out there, and when HALE BOPP was approaching, said, oh, by the way, behind HALE BOPP is this widget of some kind carrying pathogens that are going to come in and wipe out Earth. Hasn't happened. The next claim, you go on the websites and check this out, this is still there. The former reporter predicted with precise accuracy where Steve Fossett, you may remember Steve Fossett, the pilot who crashed out there. Now, he was found in the Sierra Nevadas. Ed did say he would be found in the Sierra Nevadas. That's an area of 28,000 miles, the only mountains in the area, and the logical place for a crash. As for the precise location, he was off by 60 miles, which would have limited to about 11,000 square miles, you know, how precise he narrowed it down. And of course, the point is, remote viewing had absolutely nothing to do with finding Fossett. But if you go on the websites today, this is what you see there. Now, he also told me a number of things, and you can find some of the stuff with Martians. Now, what he had told me, we were living in Santa Fe, we were at Los Alamos, that they're landing on top of Mount Baldy, and they come down here and ended up at Santa Fe Institute. There were tunnels that ran underground that went there. Now, Murray Goldman would roll over if he thought that his institute was involved in anything like that. But there's a whole story, and this will come back to us in just a little bit, you know, that they come to Earth because of a cosmic accident. They're on both planets. They live in caves, in serious, effectively, had babies doing it. Now, Larry beat me to this one the other day, and I thought appropriately, when we saw this, you know, everybody laughed. The guy predicted the end of the world, probably saw it. And so what happened 3 days later, he says, really happened. But it was invisible. The emperor has no clothes. Now, one of the things that we were talking about this morning, people who had given up fortunes, sold their property to go out to meet the end of the world. This guy has, this is assets of more than $104 million. So, and this is not the first time he's erroneously predicted the end of the world. So the tie between reality, money, and these sorts of things, just not there. Now, it said everybody laughed last time. This came up this morning in question because in 2008, we had this presented to us. And you heard it says, and of course the point is, now Courtney at the end said, hey, you've got to use remote viewing and base it against reality. We've got reality. LEX is still there, hasn't moved. So the response was, happened in another universe. I'm sorry, this sounds an awful lot like Harold Camping. You know, and by the way, if you came up with this, all remote viewing could be possible. You've got what, infinity squared as possibilities. Now, last year we had another talk here. This one was not scheduled, but it popped in there, and it was talking about technology on Mars. And part of it says that you know, one of the slides is no extraterrestrials, current inhabitants, could be humans. Possible military application. You can't see in the back, so I'll read this. This is from our website today, okay? This is not adding things to it. It says there are unregistered flights going out of Cape Canaveral all the time that are never recorded. To Mars? Well, let's understand, if you live in Florida, every time you launch from Canaveral, you may not know what's on there, but you damn sure know there was a launch. So that we're sneaking it out. So I argue that, no, this is not possible. By the way, when we went to the moon, NASA had 5.5% of the budget in order to fund Apollo. Right now, they're at 0.5%. We can't get back to the moon, and you want to assert that we've got, you know, interactions going on with Mars? Yeah, here's the problem. as I see it, for the SSE with these things there. You know, credibility is hard to gain. It's really easy to lose. And the other problem is you're not going to be known by you're going to be known by your lower limits. So I think we really have a problem. And it says if you don't believe that, look what's happened in Washington as to you know, where their credibility is. Okay, really quickly, I got asked if I have agenda. I did write a book, say why, because I'm a masochist. But my agenda is I think there's a need to make it permissible for scientists to study phenomenology without risking their reputation, their career. And if we have this kind of stuff up, it will not be beneficial. This is a chance shot you'll never see. If you don't recognize them, that's the amusing Randy. Not even though Ray Hyman and that. But the response to skeptics, if you want to do something, do nothing. Because most of these groups self-immolate. And the conclusions are this. Researchers are working with very, very weak signals. The media focuses on the noise. If we're going to continue as a scientific organization, I think we need to not be contributing to the noise. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm sure there's a lot of questions. Could we have people actually line up here so I'm feeling lazy? And that way we can be sort of somewhat organized and then we can take turns. Okay.
John, I applaud you for what you're saying here. I don't always agree with you, but you make a lot of good points. So the problem is, how do you not throw out good stuff along with the chaff? In other words, often we criticize other organizations for being biased and just throwing out a lot of valuable information. And so our goal is to try to be inclusive, even if we end up with some trash, which we have to throw out.
You can do that if you wish to die. I think it will drive the organization under.
So what do you want to use as the criterion to make a distinction?
Well, I think when you get things that are demonstrably false, that would be a good place to stop.
All right. Okay, John, thanks very much. You're touching on issues which, unfortunately, I have a lot of insight on. And there were times when we also had to go through the same thing you're talking about. And when certain people retired from the military, that didn't stop them from becoming very vocal. And that fed back and gave us the bad image in our program while we were still running at a classified level. So it really did hurt us badly. And I think that's one of the factors that eventually led to losing some congressional support. So yeah, it's a real issue. And I'm painfully aware of it in some of the characters that you and I have talked about many times. But don't you think it's possible to have some kind of, not exactly a disclaimer, but some extra space if we're going in the SSE website, where you might actually say, here are some issues that have come up. As a group, we don't necessarily agree, and we may not agree.
I agree.
But we just want to list them.
And my point is that on our website there are no disclaimers. I showed you the one of Paul Hellier's. I mean, it says we believe that ET is here and we're interacting with them and have been, and we ought to be welcoming on that. The same thing. And I think Adam's done a great job with what he's had to work. But again, if we want to go to outside industry, as we're talking about looking for corporate sponsorship, and they're going to come in and look, you'd better be credible. And you can identify things as hypothetical and set it on the side. I don't think there's any problem with that. But again, when you get to LAX is not underwater, pretty demonstrable.
Two quick questions. One, I came from AT&T Laboratories. I've been a member for a couple of years. And when I talked to my vice president at the labs to say, what am I going to do for my vacation, she said, and I tried to explain this in the most optimistic way.
I have to read lips.
No, sorry. So her response was, you're a weird boy. I actually don't want to hear that kind of response because I think, as you mentioned, there's some fabulous stuff. The second part of this was, I couldn't agree more. I hope to see a lot of rigor. And the reason I came is to see if there's anything I can do just to help a little bit. There's some techniques we developed at the labs in the machine learning community boosting that apply to some of the algorithmic work in machine learning, but they can be used, I think, to optimize signals, the signal-to-noise ratio. So I think there's some techniques we can apply to help with this exact problem.
Thanks.
John, since we don't discuss a lot of internal stuff before the wider community, the rest of the SSE has no way to know that at the council meeting I made the mistake of volunteering to be chair of the online presence committee. But in my capacity in that position, I'll be working with Adam, I'll be working with Mike Wilson. I would like to invite you to please send me or somebody your evaluation of what on the SSE website you see as really preposterous, demonstrably untrue, or discreditable. I don't promise that we will follow all of your suggestions, but I promise that they will be paid attention to.
Appreciate it, but some of it's demonstrably there. Thank you.